Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Okay. Alhamdulillah. We have now covered all the rulings of what makes a fast valid. And we've also covered all the rulings of what makes a fast invalid. And we also know how to make up invalid fasts to great depth. So you guys should have a lot of clarity when it comes to stuff like this. Now we're just going to kind of fill the gaps in before we introduce a new topic about i'tikaf, but that's going to come at the end, inshallah. And so the way we're going to fill the gaps is we're going to talk a little bit about the sunan and the makruhat of the fasting. Now we've defined sunan, which is a plural of sunnah, and makruhat, which is a plural of makruh before, where we said that the sunnah is something that you're rewarded for doing, and you can leave it if you wish. And makruhat is something that you can do, but you're actually rewarded for leaving it. So let's start with the sunan. There are 6 main sunan that we're going to mention. The first one is to break your fast with something sweet. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he used to break his fast with fresh dates. And if he didn't have access to fresh dates, he would have dry dates. And if he didn't have access to dry dates, he would just take a few sips of water. And one thing I want to kind of focus on here before we move on to the next sunnah is just notice how, subhanAllah, modern science is finding out that a lot of the things that the Prophet ﷺ used to do with regards to his diet and the way he slept and everything like that is always proven to be something that's beneficial for our body, subhanAllah. And so this is definitely a sunnah that if you're able to implement it, that you should go for it, inshallah ta'ala. Okay? The second sunnah, which is kind of linked to the first one, is to break your fast with an odd number of dates. Okay? And that's if you do end up having dates. The third sunnah is to make dua at the time of iftar before you break your fast. You really want to spill your heart out when it comes to this time and make it as sincere as possible. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said 3 people's du'as are not rejected. And the first one that he mentioned is the fasting person when he breaks his fast. So right before you break your fast, just make a lot of dua, spill your heart out, make it as sincere as possible, and I promise you, inshallah, you'll see the benefits of that and the fruits of that in your life. The fourth sunnah, which is kind of linked to the third one as well, is to rush to break your fast. Don't delay it too long. There's many people, for example, that they just wait like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Don't delay breaking your fast. Break it instantly as soon as possible, as soon as you finish your du'as, and that would be a sunnah fulfilled, okay? The fifth sunnah is about your suhoor. Now, suhoor is the food that you have, as you know, before you start fasting again. And this is something that's very much encouraged by the Prophet ﷺ. And also the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the best suhoor that you can have is dates as well, subhanAllah. And so delaying suhoor and then just having a few dates is pretty much the best thing that you can do every single day before you start your fast. But when is the best time to have suhoor? Because some people, they delay it until the last minute before they start their fast. This is not exactly correct. You want to delay it to the point where you've reached pretty much the last sixth of the night, okay? But then when there's about 20 minutes left until Fajr, then you can just hold off. Try not to eat or drink anything in that time, just in case. I mean, back in the day, they didn't have prayer timetables or anything like that, so they would stop about 20 minutes before Fajr and still get this sunnah. But again, from our perspective, just in case, it would be better to just hold off 20 minutes before Fajr starts. And finally, the last sunnah is to do as many good deeds as possible and stay away from as many bad deeds as possible. And of the good deeds are personal, so Quran, Taraweeh, doing your adhkar, making dua, but also don't neglect doing good deeds for others. And the scholars have said that doing good deeds for others is better than doing good deeds for yourself. Do both of them, inshallah. Do a mix of both. So other things that you can do for other people is donate to charity, right? Or you can help people that are in need, or you can be good to your parents, or you can hold yourself back from saying bad things or gossiping with other people. There's many things that you can do, just increase in good and decrease in bad, inshallah ta'ala. So that's all the sunan, or the main sunan of fasting. What about the makruhat, the disliked things that if you were not to do them, then you would get rewarded for it? There's 4 main ones that we're going to mention. The first one is tasting food with the corner of your mouth and then spitting it out. This is something that's allowed, okay? But it's something that is makruh. It's something that's disliked to do because it does increase the chances of something reaching your throat, which would nullify your fast. So it's better to avoid something like that. The second one is doing hijama. Now, hijama is basically cupping, and that's where essentially bad blood is taken out of your body through it, okay? And some people who do hijama, they actually become a little bit ill and maybe feel a little bit dizzy after it. But if you know you're going to be fine, it's fine. You can do hijama. But if you know that it's going to make you ill, then it becomes makruh for you, okay? So if it's going to make you dizzy and ill and weak and you're not able to worship Allah the next day properly, then it becomes makruh. And just one little caveat I want to add to this is that because of this ruling and something known as qiyas, which is like extrapolation essentially, this is why we know that doing blood tests when there's no necessity is also makruh as well. Extracting blood in any way where there's no, necessity is something that is makruh as well. All right, the third makruh is related to your spouse. And I know a lot of people here are single, so may Allah grant you pious spouses. But prolonged kissing or touching of your spouse, this is allowed, but it's makruh. But of course, as we've mentioned before, if you know that this is going to lead to the release of many, then you leave it altogether. However, if you're going to be fine, then prolonged, intimacy from that perspective is something that is makruh. But the odd, kiss or whatever to show a bit of affection to your spouse is fine. All right? And the final makruh we're going to mention is arguments and bad speech. This is makruh. So if you guys get into an argument, just stop. Realize you're in one of the best months of the entire year, and within it is the best night of the entire year, which is Laylatul Qadr, right? And so if you guys ever get into an argument, or you see someone engaging in bad speech, backbiting, or swearing, just avoid all of that. Walk away from it. You don't need any of that, inshallah, and it's going to perfect your fasting altogether, okay? And so that is the sunan and the makruhat of fasting altogether. And so now we're going to move on to complete the picture, the main nafil fasts that you can do outside of Ramadan. Because a lot of people ask, what other fasting can I do outside of Ramadan? This is going to give you a very good picture and pretty much give you all the main ones, apart from maybe one or two, okay? The first one, and there's going to be 9 that we mention, and you probably have heard of them all, but at least you have them all in one place. The first one is fasting Mondays and Thursdays, the most common one. The Prophet ﷺ said that a man's deeds are presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Mondays and Thursdays. And I, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, like that my deeds are presented to Allah whilst I'm fasting. And so he used to fast Mondays and Thursdays, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and so we should try and do that too. Advice to myself first and foremost. The second one is fasting the 6 days of Shawwal. Now we mentioned in a couple of lessons ago that Shawwal is the month that comes after Ramadan, right? And so there's the 6 days after Ramadan in Shawwal. If you fast them, the Prophet ﷺ says that if you do fast them, then it's as if you fasted the entire year. And so a lot of people, what they do is that as soon as Ramadan finishes and as soon as the first day of Eid finishes, they fast 6 days straight away after that. But for the Malikis, this is makruh to do it all in one go. Why? Because it stops people from thinking that these 6 days are an obligation or that somehow their Ramadan is incomplete if they do them. And so the Malikis hold the position that it's better to split them up. Okay? So that's the second nafil fast that you can do after Ramadan. The third one is fasting the 3 white days of every month other than Ramadan. Also very, very common. These days are the 13th and the 14th and the 15th of every single month. How do we know that these are recommended? Abu Hurairah, one of the closest companions of the Prophet ﷺ, he said that my close friend, referring to the Prophet ﷺ, advised me to do 3 things. The first one was fasting 3 days of every month. And the other 2 are praying the duha prayer, which is from sunrise until dhuhr, and praying witr before sleeping, which is the 1 unit before the next day, essentially. Okay? And so that's the third one, inshallah. The fourth nafil fast is fasting the day of Arafah for those who are not doing Hajj. Also a very common one. The Prophet ﷺ said that whoever fasts Arafah, okay, it expiates the sins of the past year and the coming year after that. Look at how much virtue is in these days, subhanAllah. Imagine if we stuck onto these days and we did them year in, year out. It's like Allah's laid the red carpet for us to enter Jannah, subhanAllah. So that is the day of Arafah for those who are not doing Hajj. For those who are doing Hajj, it's haram for them to fast on that day. The fifth nafil fast is fasting the 9 days of Dhul Hijjah. Okay, Dhul Hijjah is one of the months of the Islamic calendar. The 9th day is Arafah, but fasting the days before is something as well that is encouraged. And it's the days that lead up to Eid al-Adha as well, because the day of Arafah is the day before Eid al-Adha. So those 9 days before, from the beginning of the month until Eid al-Adha, it is encouraged to fast in these days too. Now we're going to move on to the ones which are not so common, okay? Number 6, fasting the day of Ashura. Yeah, this is the 10th of Muharram. Muharram is the first month of the Islamic calendar, the January equivalent, if you like. Yeah, and this is where, essentially on the 10th of that month, this is when Musa alayhi salam was saved from Fir'aun. So you know the splitting of the sea, this is when it happened on that day. And subhanAllah, when the Prophet alayhi salam, he saw the Jews in Medina fasting on this day, he said that if I'm alive next year, I would fast the 9th and the 10th just to distinguish from the Jews about this matter. But subhanAllah, he passed away before that year came. And so we are encouraged, inshallah, to fast the 9th and the 10th of Muharram, or the 10th and the 11th. But fasting just the 10th is also fine. But it's not the complete sunnah that you get after that. The 7th nafil fast is fasting a lot or as much as you can of the month of Muharram as well. The same month of Ashura, yeah, fasting as much of that month as possible. And this is actually the best month that you can fast after Ramadan, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, and I want you to pay attention to the wording, he said that the best fast after Ramadan is the month of Allah, Muharram. Imagine, he called it the month of Allah, ﷺ, which shows you how much virtue is in this month. So it's not just fasting really that you should increase in, but good deeds in general, because this is a very, very special month indeed, considering it's been called the month of Allah. 2 more left. The 8th nafil fast is fasting much of the month of Sha'ban. And you guys know that Sha'ban is the month before Ramadan. Aisha radiallahu anha, she once said that the Prophet ﷺ did not fast in any month as much as he fasted in Sha'ban. Yeah, he used to fast most of Sha'ban, except for just a few days here and there. And finally, and this is the one which is probably not as well known by the people, it is fasting the same way that Dawood alayhi salam used to fast. The Prophet alayhi salam, he said, the most beloved fasting to Allah is the fasting of Dawood. He used to fast 1 day on and not fast the next day. So he'd be on and off like this, 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off for the entire year. This is a very difficult thing to achieve, but if you're able to achieve it, then this is very, very virtuous indeed. So that summarizes the 9 nafil fast that you can do. And it's all gathered in one place. So you guys, if you ever need to refer to these days, you can always come back to this video, this recording, or this class in general, and it will benefit you bi'idhnillah ta'ala. But with that said, there are also makruh times to fast, and there's only 2. So don't worry, there is a lot of information here, but inshallah, if you just repeat it a few times, you will memorize it, inshallah. There are 2 makruh times to fast. The first one being fasting on Friday. There's a lot of, people who ask, is it okay to fast on Friday and whatnot? All madhabs, they say that fasting on Friday is makruh, except the Maliki madhab, funnily enough. But the reason why I've mentioned it in the makruh fast is because it is the majority opinion that fasting on Friday is makruh, and it is definitely better to avoid doing that as well. But the Malikis, they actually say it's perfectly fine. However, I've mentioned it here in the Makruhat because it's better to avoid fasting on Friday. But if you have to, there's no problem. And the second makruh fast is fasting the entire year apart from the haram times to fast. You can actually fast all year round apart from the haram times. And the haram times are the first day of the 2 Eids and the 3 days after the second Eid, which is Eid al-Adha. The 3 days of Tashriq, they're called. Yeah? And so those 3 days and the first day of the 2 Eids is haram for you to fast them. But other than that, you can fast the entire year, every single day. But it's something that's makruh. Why? Because it actually goes against the balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked of us in our deen. Our deen is balanced, and it's not something that's recommended to break that balance. Tayyib. Now you guys understand things very deeply. But there is one more very, very important topic that we need to cover. Combining intentions. Very, very important topic. Let's say it's Monday, and obviously you fast on Monday because it's something that's a sunnah, but it's also the day of Ashura at the same time. Or let's say it's the 13th of the month, one of the white days, and it's also the month of Muharram, which is encouraged for us to fast in that because it's also a sunnah. Can you combine intentions? Absolutely. You can combine intentions if you have 2 nafil fasts that coincide on the exact same day. And you'll get double the intention. You'll get the reward for both of them. But what about combining a fard intention with a nafil intention? Let's say you're making up a day of Ramadan, which is a fard, right? But then it coincides with a Thursday, which is a sunnah. Can you combine? The Maliki position is that no, you cannot combine fard fasts with nafil fasts. However, there is a difference of opinion, and some of the madhabs have allowed it. Okay? And so that summarizes all the rulings regarding to fasting. Alhamdulillah.